this past week, the Ohio legislature passed a bill, House Bill 99, which allows Ohioans, adults, that work inside schools and employees to carry a firearm. Yes, school employees now have the ability to carry a firearm on school premises to protect not only the children's lives, but the lives of the staff, anyone that's on those premises during any given day. This is all in light of the mass shootings that we have had. More respectively and specifically, last shooting or mass shooting we had in Texas, Uvalde, Texas, where 19 children from the ages of 9 to 11 were murdered along with 2 school teachers. And this was to use an old statement, the straw that broke the camel's back. We've had mass shootings in subways, in churches, in shopping centers, in time past, and even recently. The New York shooting in the supermarket. And it seems like it's not going to stop. I've said this before. I'm not going to say that this is the beginning of sorrows. This actually began a long time ago. It's just escalating. And there's been great controversy, great debate and deliberation over whether or not school personnel should be armed on school premises. What is your take? Do you believe that school teachers, counselors, principals, or just staff in general, given the proper training, should be carrying a weapon, a firearm more specifically, on school property? Or do you believe that our law enforcement is enough? School security is enough? No. All you need to do is just go and look back at what's already occurred. And in Texas, there are people upset, angry with the school system, the police department, for late response. They say they waited about 48 minutes in the hallway while the shooter was inside with the children and staff, and the police were afraid, according to many people. So why could they have not responded faster? And they were there. Same thing with a few other incidents. There were security guards armed, and it didn't work out. I'm not playing the devil's advocate, but I'm just simply saying this. I know you've heard this before. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. And I told my students not too long ago, if you lay a gun on the table and walk away from it, it doesn't do any harm to anyone. But it's the intent of that individual that picks that weapon up. What's in their heart and their mind. And one radio YouTube personality, Charlemagne, made the statement, you cannot legislate away hate. There are people like that walking amongst us all day long, every single day. You don't know who it is or who it could be. You don't know what could trigger an individual at any moment, whether they be mentally challenged or have some mental health issues or not. It could just be a crime of passion. It could be whatever. You can't read an individual's mind. We just don't know. So what's a person to do? I encourage you to go back to a video that I did maybe 2 or 3 videos ago where I spoke on this in brevity. So I believe that it's a sort of a two-edged sword. There's pros and cons to it. There's pros and cons to a teacher or a staff member in the school carrying a weapon, a firearm. I think one pro is with the proper training, and I do mean proper training, and that's more than 24 hours of training that they were talking about in this particular Bill 99 in Ohio. 24 hours is not enough. It's not. But with proper training, with an adequate amount of hours or man hours in training, and picking the proper people who have had an extensive background check, testing also their emotions, or giving them a stress test, if you will, their mental stability, before you even consider that individual. Before you even consider that individual to be carrying or bearing a firearm where children are involved or staff. So if they meet those requirements, I think it's a win situation if they meet those requirements. And then there's some people on the other side that say, well, it's going to make children feel uncomfortable and unsafe. Well, I don't think it's going to make them feel any more unsafe when a police officer walks around. So the amount of respect that you should give to a police officer, knowing what they represent, you give it to the teacher already, I would hope, right? So it should be about the same. It should be balanced. So if you respect a police officer with a badge and a gun, and you say, well, that's a police officer, what makes the teacher any less respected? Because you should know that person. And then the teacher should have a close enough relationship and know their students where they will not be intimidated by and afraid of you carrying a weapon in the school. And of course, this stems also from the home training and or instruction. The parents should be on board if this were to actually come to pass this way. If the school did decide, and from what I understand or comprehend, that it's up to the particular school whether or not they want to implement this particular plan. So that's a pro. It's good. But also to add, I believe that you have to have the proper amount of funding and stop having these qualms about the budget. We spend money on frivolous things as a state all the time. And I'm not just speaking specifically of Ohio, but I'm saying many states. We blow money all the time on things that we don't need to be blowing it on. And we pay less attention to the things that really matter until some emergency erupts, and all of a sudden we're playing catch up. But it's too late, or when it's too late. So I believe security doors should be invested in. I know some schools have them, but not all of them. There should be a close monitoring of the facility and people coming in. You should have a resource officer. All schools don't have resource officers that are armed, to my knowledge, in America, that is. A resource officer, maybe 2. That's what I think. And this will help. Now, if the person can gain access to the building and they're carrying an AR-15, as some of the perpetrators have in these past incidents, then I think it's a very, very difficult thing to handle internally, even with a trained person who's armed with a handgun inside the school. If you can stop that perpetrator from getting inside the school, that's a win-win situation if you can. But there's always that opportunity, that one moment when someone slips and this person comes in. That's something to think about as well. So I'm afraid, and I would be afraid, if I have an individual that is untrained, not mentally stable as a teacher or staff member in the school that makes a mistake and maybe even jeopardizes the life of a child or many children by panicking if that situation were to erupt in that particular school. That's what I would be afraid of. You made a decision that was not appropriate. You panicked under pressure, depending on how the situation comes down. We don't know. You haven't been on the battlefield. Most people have not. You've never been in that situation. Even with the proper training, when it actually happens, it doesn't always work the way the training did. So we don't know. I'm going to hold back a little bit on discussing this further in detail because there's a whole lot of variables here. It really is. There's a whole lot of pros and cons here. And both sides of the aisle are right in some respects. I don't believe totally that teachers and staff members in the school should be carrying firearms. I do believe if they do implement that in that particular facility, that they have to do a strenuous psychological examination of that individual or those people and give them proper training and stop not wanting to spend money on the training and go ahead and do it before we're going to be facing another similar tragedy that we just experienced in Texas at Robb Elementary in Uvalde. Proper training. Now, if that does not occur that way, I'm against it. I'm totally against it. That's the only way that I would accept it. Now, as far as on a similar subject, this bill that has been written into law by Governor Dewine in Ohio that goes into effect on the 13th of June, where you can carry a concealed firearm without a license or permit and without any training. That's something else we should be addressing as well. But I will say this also, just as a footnote. I think it's interesting. This is just something for you to think about. Let me know what you think. I think it's interesting when we keep trying to make all of this legislation against what they call assault weapons or rifles and AR-15s and guns of that sort. That's not going to stop the criminals. Before we had any legislation and laws and rules and restrictions and regulations against these types of weapons on the books, criminals have always been able to get guns. We're talking about the criminal element in most instances, not the regular law-abiding person. Criminals always have a way to get guns. They do. And that is measured by the amount of killings that you see every single day. Chicago, LA, New York. And the list just goes on. Where are they getting their guns from? Legislation doesn't affect them because they are under the radar. Anyway, they're not law-abiding citizens that go and fill out applications like you and I would. And they're not going to go and have a background check done on them. They're not going to do that. They're going to get it some other way, some other method. It's going to be a family member, someone they know, a friend, somebody off the street. They're going to get it from somewhere. And this includes the high-powered rifles, AR-15s, and such. They're going to always find a way to do that. I'm sorry. It's just really the world that we live in. And we cannot excuse away the fact that this is a violent world. And I don't care how many laws we make, how many laws are on the book, it's not going to stop people who have the intent to kill. It's not. It's going to happen like it has since the beginning of time. But let me know what your thoughts are on teachers and school staff being armed and concealed weapons for adults with no license or permit or even training. That's it, and that's all.